Hello and welcome back. Eddie Radosevich, George Stoya here from the SoonerScoop.com studios on Campus Corner. Another day down, the 10th practice in the books for Oklahoma. We took part in about a 20-minute stretch today. I don't know if you want to get into the breakdown of the stretch, but championship stretch, I thought.
Yeah, no, Schmitty really put him through it this morning.
Yeah, it was a real tough stretch.
Yeah, was not a whole lot to glean from the...
I like that word, glean. There wasn't a whole lot to take out of it. No, there wasn't.
We got to watch some special teams, which
I
guess is somewhat interesting. You started...
It's a hot button issue on the internet.
I was about to say, you started quite the storm with your Zach Schmidt support.
So. I mean, it's not support. It's just basically, we'll get into all of it here for another practice report. Talked to Brent Venables today as well. Kind of, I guess, gleaned on some information as far as the injury stuff goes. Jayden Gibson's going to be out for the rest of the season. Obviously, that was something that we had talked about, something you had reported on even a week ago. But we did get that confirmation today. We'll get into a little bit of Brent Venables and what he had to say, because this is kind of just a wrap-up from everything the coach had to say today in, I guess, retrospect of Oklahoma's first scrimmage, the first major scrimmage of the preseason. Obviously, they're going to have another one coming up on Saturday. And then some other things to get into. Quarterback situation, cornerback group sounds really, really good, which I think a lot of people are going to be excited about. But we're obviously excited about welcoming homefieldapparel.com to SoonerScoop.com. They are the official apparel partner with SoonerScoop.com. And the box, I know it's been selling off the racks, and you just take a look at it over at homefieldapparel.com. First order 15% off with the promo code SCOOP, SCOOP. And there's a lot of really good stuff. Obviously, you see that shirt up here in the left-hand corner. That was the one that I think Brent Venables was wearing during the retro uniform reveal that I know a lot of people really enjoyed. But there's a lot of really good stuff in there, including that the box with the 3 new items from Home Field Apparel.
Yeah, I really like the football box. You get a T-shirt in there, the 1987 Big 8 championship shirt. You also get a long sleeve shirt with the slanted OU, and then a hoodie, and then a hat, as well as a koozie and some socks. So the football box is really a good bang for your buck. And like Eddie said, you get 15% off with the code SCOOP at homefieldapparel.com.
Really comfortable, officially licensed apparel as well with vintage college designs. I mean, what better than some of this OU stuff?
I like the softball ones, too.
All of the throwback stuff, like all of the vintage stuff, really, I think, speaks to especially my generation. I know there's a lot of us that are out there buying this kind of stuff. And homefieldapparel.com, we're excited to have them throughout the football season. And it's a partnership that I feel like, George, has been a long time coming with everything that they have.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And like you said, I think the vintage stuff, you look at the Play Like a Champion Today T-shirts, the University of Oklahoma. I know my dad was talking about buying just the Oklahoma football shirt because he's old school.
Yeah,
and I think he also likes the 1985 national championship one. He was obviously, my dad played in the 80s and knows a lot of those guys. So I think that it definitely is something that I think that people can relate to.
Sure.
Because it's a throwback. But again, go to homefieldapparel.com. You can put in the promo code SCOOP and you get 15% off.
Absolutely. Let's get into a little bit of what Brent Venables had to say, George. And I know that it wasn't as much of a surprise, but obviously the injury to Jayden Gibson and everything that comes at the wide receiver position. First things first, you just feel terrible for him. I mean, obviously we covered that last week, but we did get the confirmation today from Brent Venables that he will be out for the 2024 football season.
Yeah, it sucks, but it's one of those things that I think that they feel really good about that wide receiver room, and you're going to hear Brent kind of talk about it here in a second. But, just talking to some of the players today, you could tell, especially talking to J.J. Hester.
Who's been through his own fair share of injuries, right?
Right, and I think that he can kind of relate to that. But I think everybody in that building thought Jayden was going to have a huge year, and so that's the tough part. But like I said, they feel really good about the wide receivers they do have there. Now, they still got some guys banged up, right? Jalil Farouk's returning from injury. He's pretty much 100%. Andrel Anthony, I think his timeline is still somewhat partway through the season. And then you have Nick Anderson, who was not practicing today when we went out to practice. He was suited up and everything, and I don't think it's a serious injury.
Right.
But I do anticipate he'll be ready to go by the start of the season. But you factor all that in, and that group all of a sudden does look a little thin, but it does, also open up the door for maybe a guy like a J.J. Hester or a Zion Kearney or Ivan Carrion, Brennan Thompson, some of those younger guys or guys that just haven't played as much football.
No doubt about it. We did talk to Brent Venables, as we said. Here he is kind of talking about, where Oklahoma's at through the first 10 practices, as well as the unfortunate update on Jayden Gibson.
We just finished our 10th practice of fall camp, and been a really good, tough, challenging, demanding last several days as we've gotten started, all part of preparing us both mentally and physically for the grind and challenge of a season. There's been good, there's been bad. We had our first preseason game, if you will, late last week, and again, it was everything you thought it would be. Big plays on both sides of the ball. Again, good and bad. If it's good on one side, it usually isn't good on the other. And but that's, again, our next step in our process as we get ready for the season. And you got great film from all of our practices, and our job as a staff and our job and as players is to watch the film and see how we can get better. And so I've been working a lot of things that challenge you physically, certainly things that challenge you mentally. As we've said, that the beauty and magic of a fall camp is about taking your players to their breaking point, taking your players to the edge, if you will. And their job is to take themselves there willingly. If you have a mature, tough-minded team, they'll do so. They know it's all necessary, again, as you build your identity as a football team and, find out whether or not you can build trust. That's a player's responsibility. And find out what we're really good at. So that's all part of the process right now. And, again, a lot of situational work as well. All the things that, every football team in America's got to get better at and be good at in order to win at the highest level. So like a lot of what I'm seeing and really like where we're at, right now.
How's your health right now, Brent?
My health?
Team's health.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into details, but it's about everybody. We got our bumps and bruises, and we've got one player that won't be back, and we know that's Jayden Gibson, and but other than that, everybody else, again, just the normal bumps and bruises of fall camp.
Obviously, unfortunate news there. I mean, I think that your heart breaks for a guy that, especially kind of, I just remember back to, and we've talked about it before, but I remember back to the conversation whatever Joe John Finley had said at the coach's luncheon and kind of how he had turned his, I don't want to say he's turned his life around, but his athletic life, if you will, the maturity that had come and for him to get there. And then obviously you're going to have to set out the 2024 season. You just hope that he goes through the rehab process and he can be a part of this 2025 group, because you would imagine that if he continues to make the steps that he made here over the course of the last year and a half since arriving in Norman, he'll be right there in contention to be in the mix come 2025. Obviously, you got to focus on 2024. Who's going to be that next guy up? Talking about quarterbacks, talking about wide receivers, the relationship between Jackson Arnold and everybody else. We did talk to Brent today, talking about Jackson, and I think that this is where the conversation becomes a little interesting, because I think that there is this narrative out there that has been created on the interwebs mostly that there's some type of quarterback competition in Norman. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I just don't think that that's the case. I kind of think it's almost kind of a little bit of bullshit.
Oh, yeah, 100%. It is. It's a lot of BS. And look, we love the message boards. We live on the message boards.
And this is the other thing that you got to say. Sorry for cutting you off, but it's nobody's saying that Michael Hawkins isn't good either when we get into this conversation. I think that there's a lot of people that have been very, very impressed by Michael Hawkins. In fact, so much so, I don't think that there's a conversation about backup right now. I think Michael Hawkins is probably your backup quarterback. But Jackson Arnold's the quarterback moving forward. He's going to be the starter come August 30th against Temple.
Yeah, look, you'll turn on local radio, you'll read the message board.
I'm part of the problem. I get it.
But I think that what you need to know is Jackson Arnold didn't have a great scrimmage. That happens in football, right? We also heard that he had a great practice on Monday and another great practice on Tuesday. And let's also just I feel like we as media and fans, we have this warped brain because of what happened a few years ago.
And up, I was one of those people that was like, you guys are idiots.
Yeah.
Spencer Rattler's the future.
But that's a very rare and unique situation, and let's not forget the situation that Jackson Arnold.
I like how you're
in
talking
right
so
now.
calmly about this.
Well, because I've had a lot of time to think about it. But like, let's just think about this for a second. Jackson Arnold has played one collegiate football game. He's playing behind an offensive line that has never played together before. He's got a new playbook and a new offensive coordinator. 4 of his top 5 wide receivers didn't play in the scrimmage the other day. Like, factor in all of those things and realize that he's going to have some bad practices. So when those bad practices happen, that doesn't mean all of a sudden that, oh boy, there's a quarterback controversy and that Michael Hawkins, because Michael Hawkins maybe played better in the scrimmage, which, to be clear, the reporting is that the defense dominated the whole scrimmage. First team, second team, third team.
Right.
Like, it was not just Jackson Arnold was bad. It was across the board. The offense didn't perform very well. And that's just going to happen. That is fall camp. And it goes back to the days of Trevor Knight and Baker Mayfield quarterback competition, Kyler Murray and Austin Kendall. Yes, that was a thing. Jalen Hurts and Spencer Rattler. I remember during that season people saying maybe they should just play the true freshman quarterback, Spencer Rattler. Obviously, the Spencer Rattler and Caleb Williams situation. So this is something that we deal with it every single year.
In a way, it's
ridiculous.
It's a very kind of privileged problem, quote unquote, to have. You have 2 guys that appear to be the future of the program. Obviously, Jackson's going to get that first start or the first shot at it. I think he's earned that. Everybody around the program, the locker room, feels that Jackson's going to be the guy. He's going to be really good. And not to mention, you're going against ones. You're going against a pretty damn good defense, George.
Yeah, and Brent said as much today. Like, when he was asked about Jackson, one of the first things he said, and you'll hear the clip, is like, this defense on all 3 levels is going to be elite. Like, they truly believe that.
I don't know if he said elite, but he said pretty damn good,
Pretty
basically.
damn good. But there's a lot of people in that building that believe this defense is going to be really good this year, and I think that that's shown up through camp. And to be honest, Eddie, it would be a much bigger red flag for this football team right now if the defense wasn't dominating.
Correct.
You have a defensive-minded head coach, one of the best defensive minds in all of football in Brent Venables, and it's year 3 under him, the way they've recruited, the guys they've brought in, the guys that came back from last year's defense that was pretty good. Like, they should be winning practice most of the days, And
every once in a while, you want to see your Buckus Award or watch list type of guy, Danny Stutzman. Every once in a while, he maybe needs to pick off a ball at camp.
Exactly, and so it's one of those things. It's a give and take, and Brent said it in the opening statement. Like, if one side's good, that means one side's probably not been good that day, right? And so that's just part of fall camp, and just be patient with Jackson Arnold. And I know I've said that a million times on here, but
you're going to say it a million more times
even throughout the season. But to give the kids some grace, give the kids some patience, because it wasn't long ago that I remember sitting there watching the 3rd quarter of OU Tennessee and thinking they got to get Trevor Knight in the game.
Yeah,
And Baker Mayfield goes on to be one of the best quarterbacks. And I'm not saying that's going to happen with Jackson. And maybe Jackson Arnold sucks. Like, that could very well happen. We don't know. And maybe Michael Hawkins is the second coming of Caleb Williams, right? I don't know. But, like, there's a huge belief, and they're taking a big gamble on Jackson Arnold, and they believe in him. That faith has not wavered despite what you might hear on the radio.
Because somebody had a bad day at practice.
Yeah, or read on the message board because of one bad scrimmage. Like, get that out of your system.
Don't take our word for it. Take the headman's word for it. Here's Brent Venables talking about Jackson Arnold, as well as kind of what that receiver situation looks like with Jayden Gibson now sidelined for the year.
Jackson's doing good. From a leadership standpoint, showing up every day. He's been consistent. He's been challenged. Again, the guys he's going against every day, I think, is making not only him but the offense better. And all 3 levels of that defense, you have guys that can play for most programs in the country, if not all. And I don't like to anoint people. I think that, we'll see how they play this year. But, we have a chance at all 3 levels to have an awfully good group, and that's what they are facing. Jackson is facing every single day. We do mostly, again, ones against ones and about everything. So, like the progress of the entire offense. They had a nice day today, and we did some live work again today and moving the ball, and really responded, put us in scoring position, gave us a chance to win. So that's what you want.
Jayden Gibson, and you already got a couple guys at that position coming back from injury. How do you manage that group, and who are some guys maybe that have stepped up with those injuries?
Yeah, I mean, you know the guys that have stepped up. Nick and Jalil, Deion Burks, J.J. Hester, I think Ivan Carry-On, and Jaquez Petaway, as well as Zion Kearney. Those guys in particular, probably missing somebody there, but and then we really like Zion Raggins, what he has shown particularly early in camp. KJ Daniels did some great things. Those two guys are really, really fast, and they get to full speed in a hurry. I think our ability to run the ball and attack the field with our tight ends, the middle of the field, so between Bauer and Jake and Cade McIntyre, Caden Helms, Devon Mitchell, that group of guys, it helps everybody. They all complement each other. But the receiver group is a group of guys a lot of them played a lot of football, and have been really successful. So we do have some good depth there. You hate that for anybody when a season comes in to an end prematurely, but that's a group that we feel really good about who's still in that group.
Perhaps a name that has kind of emerged on the scene here as we get in through what is basically a week and a half, 2 weeks into preseason camp, and that is J.J. Hester, a guy that I think a lot of people, when he transferred to Norman from Missouri, they looked at him and kind of thought, okay, maybe, probably will never contribute a whole lot, but I think that window of opportunity, and Bob Przybylo wrote about it on SoonerScoop.com today. We talked to J.J. Hester today. It seems like that window of opportunity is there for somebody like a J.J. Hester to kind of emerge from the darkness that comes with Jayden Gibson's season-ending injury.
It's wide open, right? I still think you're going to have guys like Deion Burks and Jalil Farouk and Nick Anderson obviously kind of lead that group,
Sure.
But J.J. Hester, with the way that he's performed in fall camp, everything we've heard, he's been really good. He's going to have an opportunity, and I think that for him, he's a guy that has dealt with a couple injuries. I think Brent said today, broke his foot twice, which is just unfortunate. But, he's a senior guy, 5th year, so he understands the system. He's a smart player, big guy. I mean, we talked to him today, and, lean dude, 6'4", 200-something pounds. Like, he's a guy that they believe can be also a vertical threat down the field. So he kind of fits that role that Jayden Gibson maybe leaves behind in terms of being a bigger guy out wide. So I think he's certainly somebody. I also just like some of the young guys, right? Like I love the idea of an Ivan Carry-On being in certain packages. Obviously, he's another tall guy. Zion
Massive
Kearney.
body.
Yeah, Zion Kearney's another one. And then the other two speedsters, KJ Daniels and Zion Raggins, like those are two guys that I feel like you can find a role for them. Those are guys that
I think when you start talking about those guys, you definitely get into the bottom end of that depth chart.
Yeah.
Like I think that so often we list off 6, 7, 8, 9 guys that you think are going to end up being pass catchers, and then you look up at the end of the season and it's like, oh, okay, there's 3 or 4 guys that are truly going to be the guys, right?
And I just wonder though if one of those two guys can maybe find a role if, say, an Andrel Anthony isn't healthy,
Sure.
or if a Brennan Thompson can't stay
then
healthy.
what do you do with a Brennan Thompson or
Exactly.
Jaquez Petaway?
And those guys, they're all speed guys, and so that's what makes me wonder, can maybe 2 of those younger guys maybe step into a role if somebody else doesn't step up. So
Sure.
My point is they have a lot of guys like Brenton just listed. I think Petaway is somebody we haven't talked enough about. Like I think he's going to have a pretty big role in this offense, especially in that slot position behind Deion Burks, because you can't play Deion Burks every single snap, right? He's going to play a lot. But when he's not in the game, who's somebody that could step in and maybe be a contributor? I think Petaway's that guy.
They're going to have a football in their hand quite a bit here throughout the football season. You can get the football that they're going to be using. George, grab that one over there, because we are excited to also have Big Game Football Factory with us. BigGameUSA.com/scoop if you were so inclined. This is the official football for the University of Oklahoma. And, everything's kind of going through a little bit of a change here with the SEC and all that kind of stuff, George. But this is the football they use, the Nike Vapor Elite, exclusively from Big Game Football Factory. And it's a hell of a football. I know that we go outside and toss it around quite a bit.
Yeah.
When it's not 1,000 degrees, obviously. It's been 1,000 degrees here lately, but over
Eddie's
the
got
weekend
a
it was
cannon.
extremely nice. Well, and they called me sure hands back in the day in the streets of Hickory Hollow Drive and Walnut Creek Estates.
Yeah,
You
I
don't
don't
have
know
a
about. I
follow-up
don't know
on that?
anything about that. Eddie,
Literally sure hands. You throw the ball and I'll catch it.
But I do know that you can find this ball at biggameusa.com/scoop. Again, biggameusa.com/scoop. Definitely a special edition, like you can see here on there with the OU SEC. So if you're a big OU fan, like this is certainly something that you'll want to have in your house.
And each ball comes with a certificate of authenticity. I can't say it. That's
Authenticity.
They knew what they were getting when they were asking me to read this. To certify the football received was commissioned and created to the specific specifications requested by the Sooners, and there it is. That's what you're going to get with the football. All you got to do is go to biggameusa.com/scoop. And Kerry wants me to say it again. I'm not going to because I know.
Authenticity.
Thank you, George. The comment section is going to be kind about that, and all I'm saying is that's kind of racist. We appreciate Big Game Football Factory for jumping on with us here, and we're going to be looking forward to kind of debuting that throughout the season here.
Yeah.
Especially going into to game weeks. But we did talk about the quarterbacks today with Brent Venables as well, and if there is a little bit of not necessarily confusion, but there are so many names when you're talking about the wide receiver unit, right? I think it's starting to become a little bit more clear in terms of what's at cornerback for Oklahoma. And simply put, you'll hear it from Brent Venables. This is one of the deepest groups that they've had since Brent got to campus.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of come up recently because, Gentry Williams got a little banged up in the scrimmage. Sounds like he's fine. He was out at practice today.
Authenticity. I think I can do it.
Keep practicing that, Eddie. But I think that we often talk about Gentry and Woody.
Sure.
But that's a position group that I think has really built a lot of depth where maybe they didn't have it as much last year. And the guy that keeps coming up, and you'll hear it from Brent, is Kenai Walker. And, last year when he had to come in when either Gentry got hurt or somebody else got banged up or they were rotating, he was really solid. And it sounds like he's been one of their best players in fall camp. And then you've got a host of younger guys and new guys like a Des Malone, a transfer from San Diego State, who I think is going to play quite a bit from Oklahoma. We got to talk to him for the first time today. It sounds like he's having a great fall camp. Jacoby Johnson is another name to watch. And so they've got a good amount of playmakers, I think, in that room other than just Gentry Williams and Woody Washington. And that's allowed them to move a guy like Woody around. Like we've talked about that a lot. Now, I think Woody's going to run out there with the first team defense and be a starting corner, but in certain situations, they can move him around because you have enough guys to go out there and play outside corner like a Kenai Walker, like a Des Malone, a Jacoby Johnson, all these guys that, again, a couple of years ago, they certainly didn't have this type of depth at that position.
Kenai Walker, 24 tackles a year ago, had the interception, had a forced fumble. I believe the interception came in the Alamo Bowl against Arizona, 4 pass breakups, but definitely sounds like he's had a really good camp here as Brent Venables, kind of recapping everything about the OU cornerback position.
Kenai Walker is probably he may have been our most consistent guy so far. At corner. Woody can play at lots of spots. And but Kenai has really picked up where he left off late in the year last year and is playing really well, had a great spring. He's had his best, 8 months since he's been here. And then Des Malone has been fantastic. Jacoby Johnson's having a really good camp. And again, we know Jacoby's really long and aggressive. Was a fantastic special teams player a year ago, and that really helped his confidence, as he's learning how to be a corner, and he's making improvement daily there. Eli Bowen has been a guy that's been just a really good football player. Nothing's, too overwhelming for him. The moment's never too big for Eli. He's got great instincts and super good technique. And then Jeremiah Newcomb has been he's been a dog in camp, man. He's been aggressive and tough and super knowledgeable, well-skilled. And Devon Jordan, same thing. Guys that can go out there and line up and play corner. They're fearless, confident. They're still learning, but that's all a group of guys that, top to bottom, were better at corner than any time that we've been here the last 2.5 years.
I think that's a pretty loud statement when you hear
Oh,
that from Brent Venables, and obviously you like a lot what you hear about those freshmen, Eli Bowen, Jeremiah Newcomb. But
Jeremiah Newcomb had an interception to the scrimmage.
very good.
So-
It sounds like that group, obviously we had talked about it, and that's something that we had talked about with Josh, just in terms of, these guys being able to come in and freshmen possibly contributing. It sounds like, though, that some of the cream's rising to the top, if you will, in terms of the cornerback position, and Jacoby Johnson, it sounds like, had a pretty good preseason camp to
Yeah.
date. The Kenai Walker news, though, that was kind of big to me today.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. And obviously you have Gentry and then Woody Washington, who, again, it was talked about today with Brent, very, very versatile. And he can go just about anywhere in that secondary.
Yeah, and Kenai Walker's just a guy I feel like we forget about.
Yeah.
It's because he doesn't do anything super flashy, but he makes nice plays, and he's just consistent. Like Brent said, he might not be a guy that, gets drafted high one day or is going to make the big play every once in a while, but I think he's super consistent, and at that position you have to be. And so it gives them the versatility to move different guys around. Like we talk about Woody Washington, and I think you're going to see him in a lot of different spots, but like an Eli Bowen, it allows him to get on the field in different spots, and it sounds like
I thought it was pretty.
He's playing everywhere.
I thought it was pretty important too that Brent wasn't afraid to say nothing's too big for him, which kind of tells me that they feel comfortable putting a lot on his plate as a freshman.
And I think that's again we've talked a lot about it with the Bowen brothers. Their football IQ is just through the roof,
Sure.
And so I think that's what Brent is saying when he talks about Eli and not having any restrictions on him. It's because he's so smart, and he's going to be in the right place, and then he just has to go make the play. And so you love to hear that about a lot of these young guys. And again, there's going to be injuries during the season. Like some of these guys are going to get hurt, and you're going to have to play some younger guys. I remember last year, I think it was Bedlam that a true freshman like Makari Vickers had to come in. Josiah Wagner came in a couple spots. Jacoby Johnson late in the season. So some of these younger guys that you might think, oh, well, Jeremiah Newcomb won't see the field a whole lot. You never know, right? And so to have that type of depth, to have that type of talent, I think speaks volumes to the job that obviously Brent Venables has done on the recruiting trail, but also a guy like Jay Valai,
right.
Who, again, we talk a lot about Brandon Hall, rightfully so, Emmett Jones, rightfully so. I think Jay Valai has done an incredible job with that cornerback room.
It's been a minute since we've talked about the Oklahoma defensive line, just in terms of things that you've heard. It's outside of maybe some of the knowns, whether it's a DJ Terry or whether it's a Ethan Downs. It sounds like Grayson Halton's had a really good preseason.
Yeah, I think he's probably their best interior defensive lineman pass rusher. Now, obviously, DJ Terry, Dominic Williams, Jaden Jackson, those guys are going to be your run stoppers. And Grayson Halton is good in that area too, but he's a little bit more twitch to him, he's also a little bit lighter, a guy that I think can really get after the passer, but he's certainly going to be in that rotation. I think that when you look at it, 4 guys have really stood out, and it's those 4 that I just mentioned. And then after them, I thought it was good to hear David Stone's name mentioned today. Devon Sears was another name that I believe Brent Venables brought up too. So
Ashton Sanders was the name that I don't know if we have heard here throughout, even going back into the spring.
Yeah, I know. So I that's good. That's 7 guys,
Sure.
and they want that to be somewhat of a 6-man rotation on the interior, and then on the outside too. Like I feel like they feel like they have good depth there. Ethan Downs, I think, has kind of set the standard there on the edge, and then you have guys like an R. Mason Thomas, who is finally healthy. PJ Adebaraway, who I've heard is having a really good fall camp. Caden Woolard, who another guy that I just don't think
He's
we're
kind
talking enough
He's
about.
in that Kenai Walker ilk
Yes.
of we just don't talk about
We
him.
forget about him, and I've heard that he's been maybe their best pass rusher. Like he had a couple sacks, I believe, in the scrimmage. So he's been really good. Trace Ford, we forget about Trace Ford, which again, is he going to be a huge playmaker for this defense? I don't think so, but when you're talking about him being like your 4th or 5th guy, that's a pretty good 4th or 5th guy to have on your roster at that position. So they're pretty, in terms of, we just talked about corner, and a couple years ago they didn't have that depth. Same thing with defensive line. A couple years ago, even last year, they didn't have this type of depth up front.
No doubt about it. Here is Brent Venables kind of giving a little bit of an update after practice number 10 about the defensive line group.
Again, I think it can be consistently anywhere between 9 and 11 guys based on what we've seen. I've seen several guys improve from where we were in the spring. Excited about the guys returning. I think everything starts with, Ethan Downs and probably DJ Terry as far as guys that have started, but again, like how guys have come along. And we talked about some of our freshmen that got here in the springtime, but I really like the improvement of Grayson Halton and like the improvement of Devon Sears. Certainly Dom Williams has done a really nice job of working and learning and getting better and earning the trust of his teammates and developing relationships there. But Jayden Jackson and David Stone have done a nice job as well. But, I think between Grayson and DJ, and then you look at, some of our guys from a year ago, guys that were not in the mix. Champ Sanders is a guy that has just been on the steady incline of improvement. So those guys inside, I feel really good about where we're at. Got to stay healthy there. I think that goes without saying. And then outside, I like the improvement that we've seen. Again, our Mason Thomas, Caden Woolard, PJ Atabare. I think I'm missing somebody. Trace Ford, and then some of our young guys there. I really think we're going to have some young guys, whether that's a Danny Okoye, amongst others, that has a chance to jump in that mix, and really excited about that group of guys, up front.
I know Gabe Eichert's been really high on Danny Okoye, right?
He has been a monster in practice, from what I've understood.
I mean, the dude, I remember one of the first times that we ever talked about on a recruiting report with Josh, just talking about how far advanced he was physically, and then to think back that this guy was playing homeschool football a year ago, it's kind of like, oh God, pray for these kids.
Well, and I think that for Danny Okoye, are you going to see him out there in, on 1st and 10 or, a 3rd and 1 in a key spot? I don't think so. But I could see a situation where he gets, 100 snaps, 50 to 100 snaps on defense this year, which is kind of where PJ was a year ago. And it's in certain situations, right? It's 3rd and long, and you just say, Danny, just go. Just go get the quarterback, go chase the ball, do what you do.
Go be an athlete.
Go be an athlete. Because I think for him, he's got such raw talent,
Sure.
right? He's so athletic that, you don't want him thinking a whole lot. Like, you just want to let him loose. And so I could see them having some different blitz packages for a guy like that where he's just causing havoc. So that's great to hear his name, right?
Absolutely.
I've heard Nigel Smith has had a really strong camp too. I don't know if he's going to get in the mix, but it would not surprise me at all if one of those two guys is in some sort of package this year with some of those other guys that were mentioned.
One other name of the defensive end group that came up today that you didn't see in that clip, but Brent Venables kind of tracked back and brought up again, was Taylor Wine, the redshirt freshman out of Tennessee that, kind of had an interesting recruitment just because Oklahoma got in on late, but was a guy that Miguel Chavis was extremely high about, even coming into this past year. When he was a true freshman. So I don't know. He's one of those guys that when we've been at practice, whether it be, out here at the practice fields down the street or even at bowl games, it's like Chavis is always yelling at him, which I think probably is a good thing because he knows that there's something in there that he's trying to unlock. And I don't know. Maybe he's a guy that ends up kind of getting into that group as one of the younger guys within the program. We talked about it with Josh on the recruiting report on Monday. If you haven't seen that, make sure you check that out on SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel. Just in terms of Oklahoma's final pursuit of 5-star Michael Fasusi. Obviously, good news there. But one of the things that, had kind of come up at the end was talking about this defense and just the totality of it. And I think that one of the bigger stories or one of the bigger headlines coming out of preseason camp has been this Oklahoma defense. They've officially kind of started to make that turn. How good can this thing be?
I think it can be really good, Eddie. But what does that look numbers-wise? I know there's been a lot of people like, well, can it be a top 10 defense? I would encourage you, one, to look at stats other than just total defense. That's just how many yards you're giving up. Look at points per game, all of that. Defensive efficiency,
Sure.
Advanced analytics, S&P Plus is what I like to look at, which is overall efficiency of the defense. And just to be clear, Georgia and Iowa are the only two programs in the last 3 years to finish in the top 10 all 3 seasons. I believe Alabama did it twice in the last 3 seasons. Texas A&M and Kentucky are the only other SEC teams to do it once in the last 3 seasons. So to get into that top 10, you have got to be an elite defense. And that's not saying I don't think Oklahoma could get there. And some things would have to fall their way. But I think also you look at their schedule and you're like, man, they're gonna face some pretty good offenses. But at the end of the day, I do think that they can be a top 20 defense in that metric. Like, I think that they're going to be that good. They have that type of talent, that type of depth. And I think the biggest thing for them is that experience. Like, you have guys that have played so much football. Danny Stutzman, who sounds like he has just been amazing in fall camp. Billy Bowman, Peyton Bowen, Robert Spears-Jennings, it sounds like, is really starting to come on and make a push for that starting safety spot alongside, Billy Bowman and obviously Peyton Bowen. So you have so many guys back there, Eddie, that I really do think that this can be the best defense Oklahoma's had in probably over a decade.
Kind of feels like something's building. Brent Venables was asked, we'll do this to close it out. Brent Venables, I can't talk today.
Authenticity.
I think I'm nervous about something, and it's that word that's going to haunt me forever. He was asked today, though, about, what's the difference between a good, a great, and maybe even an elite defense?
I mean, we got to be consistent. If we're going to be something, if you had somebody describe us, the way we would like to be described at the end of the year is a consistent group that, put the team in position to win the game on defense every single week. And I think that this is a group that if we stay committed, we stay disciplined, we have some tough-mindedness about us, guys stay hungry, they, through success, they remain humble. So, when bad things happen, man, they're at their best. And then they're able to do that, over a 4.5, 5 month period. Can you sustain it? And that's one of the hardest things to do in anything. And so well-managed success is going to be really important, and well-managed failure, equally, as important.
Make that 2 for 2 on Brent Venables' Scrum media availabilities with the phone going off.
I was going to say, we called out Dean. We got to call out Eric Bailey. Let's turn
Bailey.
that thing on silent next week.
We love you, Eric, but
We
man.
love Eric Bailey. All right, that's going to do it for a practice report with Brent Venables. Like we said, we talked to a bunch of players. We'll get back out here on Thursday to kind of go over some of the stuff that was said, talking to J.J. Hester, which is a very intriguing story, talking to Gavin Sawchuk, which, I think there's been a lot said about Javonte Barnes in the running back room. Haven't had a whole lot of talk about Gavin Sawchuk. Doesn't mean that he hasn't done well.
Yeah.
He's been extremely good. But, just kind of them kind of going side by side, and maybe what we thought was going to be a year ago is going to happen this year with that 1-2 punch at running back. And then obviously talking to Robert Spears-Jennings as well as Des Malone, the newcomer to the Oklahoma secondary, or to the Oklahoma cornerback group, which, I think that he's going to play quite a bit. Des Malone, that's one of those guys that even when he was brought in from San Diego State, you thought, okay, I kind of like what we see. And obviously we saw him at the red-white game and then on into the summer. He's kind of put himself in position to at least certainly be in that rotation at the cornerback group, which Brent said, one of the deepest that they've had since they've arrived.
Yeah, no, I really like Des Malone. I think his size combined with he's played a lot of football. I know not at this level, but he has played quite a bit of football. I think he fits in perfectly with what they want to do at that cornerback spot. And then I thought it was really interesting talking to Robert Spears-Jennings because as I've made it known, I have a man crush on Robert Spears-Jennings. He is my guy that I think is going to be a huge difference maker this year. That's not to say Peyton Bowen's not going to play a lot. I think they're both going to play a lot. But I just think that he looks incredible. I mean, he looks like a linebacker talking to him, and I think he weighs, like 220? Playing safety? Yeah.
Big old kid.
And I also saw a cool clip from OU football put out there today. He was mic'd up, I think, at practice the other day.
Very cool.
And was pretty dominant. There was one clip of him running side by side with Deion Burks. So that tells you the kind of athlete that Robert Spears-Jennings is if he can hang with Deion Burks in coverage.
No doubt. It's going to be interesting if you're having to ask questions to Robert Spears-Jennings from 1,000 feet. A little restraining order if you get weird about it. You know what I mean?
I was like, what are you talking about?
It'd be kind of like me in the Kappa
You
house.
just practice authenticity.
Yeah, we're not going to get there. We're not going to get there this year. We appreciate everybody stopping by today. It was good to catch up with Brent Venables as we move into Wednesday, which will be the day of the unofficial 40, obviously, the podcast, and the return of one Josh McQuestion. I know I nailed that one. For George Stoya, I'm Eddie Radosevich. We'll see you right back here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel.